Juggernaut. This is recording this in January 2019. This is our APLEA update, 2019 edition. We're going to do what's called the State of APLEA. All right, we got in January, all these governments do. The president does the State of the Union address. The governor does the State of the State. So we're going to do the State of the Company. All right, so we're going to hear a little bit about APLEA. For those of you who don't know, we started this company right after 9/11. My brother and I did, with the motto of equipping leaders to defend freedom. All right, and let me tell you that in the last 20 years, freedom has been under attack like never before. And we're going to talk about what this means. It's been 18 years since 9/11, but we're going to just talk to you mostly about what we're going to do this year and some of the things that are pertaining to the company. In 2018, we formed two separate branches of APLEA, APLEA East Coast and APLEA West Coast, and running operations on I'm on the East Coast running operations, and Jay Legend's on the West Coast. So anyways, we're still working together, of course. This year we're going to be heading into the Midwest. I'm actually personally going to be going there and setting up operations in the Midwest, and we're going to be trying to spread the program even more. So for those of you who don't understand what the program is, I'm going to explain it to you. There's a lot of different components. We have the APLEA Rangers, which is a free program to join. And we have the APLEA Training Academy, which involves training and self-defense training, from unarmed self-defense to the 3-blade system to the 3-gun system. All right, and I won't get into that right now. There's other videos on that. And also, what APLEA is all about, we have a chaplains program, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that as far as how it pertains to Africa. And we have more and more programs that are coming on board every day. So if you want to be involved in APLEA, really there's not a requirement as far as how much time you got to put in, how much mandatory whatever, how much money you got to spend. The APLEA Rangers is free to everybody. We have a patch set. I'll just show you real quick. I'm going to be in Atlantic City actually in about a week. And so this patch set, I'll have some of these on me. If you see me in Atlantic City, stop me, and I can get you set like this. $100, you put it on your, this is the back patch you put on your vest, and on the front DOF stands for Defenders of Freedom. So we have guys wearing this. We have currently about 5,000 Rangers, and we're growing, and we're also expanding in other countries. So we have members that are in other countries, and we'll be talking about a little bit about that in this video. But let me give you my bullet points. I actually watched the State of the State yesterday for New York State, and my favorite person, the governor, was on there talking about what are the things he wants to do in the first 100 days of 2019. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about mine and what our plan is to do. First of all, Africa. We're going to be talking about Africa. We're going to be talking about Israel and how that pertains to equipping leaders to defend freedom. We're going to talk about the USA plan for 2019. And then last but not least, we're going to talk about green business, especially how it relates to New York State, as well as, just some of the history of it, because I think it's something that people don't really know about. So I just wanted a couple of interesting things, especially because it was part of our governor's State of the State. I just wanted to bullet point on some of this stuff because for those of you who don't live in New York State, he basically pitched that we are going to recreational. It's medically legal right now for cannabis in New York State if you have a card. So what he's proposing is that within his first 100 days, he's going to make it recreational legal, just like Massachusetts, Vermont, and 10 states have done. And the reason why is because he's losing a lot of revenue. So in effect, he's going to become the biggest drug dealer. If you want to call marijuana a drug, he's going to become the biggest drug dealer in New York State that way. So it's all about profits. I think it's interesting. We're not going to skip ahead to that. Let me go backwards, and let's just start talking about Africa first, because this is something that's very exciting. It's coming up very soon. For those of you who want to go, we still have a little bit of time. If you want to be on the trip, you're going to need your passport and visa stamp from Nigeria, and that's about it, and a plane ticket. And so I can help you get some of that stuff and point you in the right direction. The cost for that, we're charging $2,100. It's going to cover the whole week, all expenses. It's going to be a great time. We're going to bring the camcorder down there. We'll be filming. I just talked to my Africa contact, Peace, at Pekka right now, and her family is there preparing for us to arrive. And they have hundreds of people that are going to be attending. So it's going to be a lot of fun. It's a way we can give back with APLEA. This training normally we offer for $500 US dollars. We're giving it away for free to locals there, locals in security, as well as people that are just private citizens. So that's coming up. That's in March, the first week or the second week in March 8th through 16th. Israel. Let's talk about Israel real quick. How does that relate to equipping leaders to defend freedom? Okay, in 2001, 9/11 happens. Terrorists take over airplanes and they crash them into buildings. And one of them was they tried to crash into the White House, and they hit the Twin Towers, and it hit the Pentagon. So anyways, what does Israel have to do with it? Well, Israel's been fighting terrorism since its inception. It is surrounded by countries that want to wipe Israel off the map. And in the last 10 years, I've been training with the Israelis, and I've studied Krav Maga with them. I've studied shooting platforms, how they do entry techniques like police and SWAT do, but how Israeli method is a little bit different because it's based off a single shooter, single responder that builds into a team, where the U.S. model is based on a team model that can break apart into smaller teams. So they both have valuable pieces to it. I'm not claiming to be an expert in any of that, but what I am claiming is that Israel is the experts in that, and that I think it's very invaluable to study that. Okay. Also, there's a lot more to that, but I've been to Israel. My plan is in the future of APLEA, we're going to be making more trips. For those of you who've never been to the old city, to Jerusalem, to Tel Aviv. There's a lot of things that we're going to be doing at least every couple of years. Our plan is to get back to Israel, okay? So if you want to come on that trip with us, let us know. Again, the cost is relatively the same, depending on how soon you book it with us, $2,800 a person, and you can spend a week in Israel with us. So the USA plan, let's talk about that really quick. The USA plan for APLEA is very important, okay? So what my plan is to do, and it's something I've been discussing with my brother and other people in APLEA, is that I want to open schools. I've been teaching martial arts for 20 years, over 20 years. I've been studying for over 25, and I want to open schools that are for people who can't afford the regular tuition price. Regular tuition price in martial arts, the going rate right now is about $150. So we're a month. So what we're trying to do is be able to offer it even a percentage of students in your school, to be able to offer for at-risk youth $25, $50 a month, a lower price point, so people can train. You know, you can get a Planet Fitness membership for $10 a month and get in shape, and that's great. But the problem is, getting in shape isn't necessarily saving your life, and I believe that everybody in America needs to know how to defend themselves. In the last 20 years, we've seen an increase in active shooters. We've seen an increase in violence, all kinds of things, from domestic terrorism to foreign terrorists that come in here and they infiltrate. So I believe that teaching self-defense on a very small level to your average citizen, okay, whether it's a young person or an adult, I think everybody needs to know this. Within 10 people, it would be valuable. Within 10 or 12 people, that 2 people at least can protect themselves, and not only know how to protect themselves with punching and kicking and blocking and knives and guns and stuff, but also be able to help guide people to a safe place and know how to do that, okay? So obviously in school districts now, it's important that every teacher knows how to keep their classroom safe from an active threat, okay, from an active shooter. So that's what I'm talking about. So I would like to, starting in 2009, it may take 3 years to do this, I'd like to put 100 schools in the United States, plant in different cities in the United States. I'm going to be traveling to different states. I'm going to be doing a lot of networking so that I can find people that want to help do this. I'm also planning to build a bridge between Africa and the United States in this, and I have lots of friends in Africa that are looking for ways to come over here legally and become American citizens, and I would like to help put some of these African instructors that I'm going to be training in Africa, bringing them over to the United States to help train our at-risk youth here in America. So it's going to have multiple components to it. It's very exciting. And for those of you who want to know more about it, contact me and I'll talk to you about it and how you could fit in and how you could get into this with us. So that is the USA plan. So for those of you, I've been running martial arts schools for years, okay? I've struggled. I've had tiny little schools out of garages. I've had big studios where I paid lots of overhead. All right, I've had I've helped other people start schools. In fact, right now, though I don't have a storefront of my own, there's several people in the neighborhood that have storefronts in schools because of what I did in trying to help train people to defend themselves. That they now have gone off and they started their own program, which is awesome. So it's not all about my program, but if you want to be involved in APLEA, it's very simple. You're a member when you say you are. Okay, we have a code of ethics, and we are very pro-Israel. We are very pro-life. We respect all life. We're pro-organizations that defend freedom. I'll tell you another thing that kind of been concerning me. So I'm watching the State of the State. So let me talk about the last thing about green business, and I'm just going to talk about America, specifically New York State. You know, years and years ago, New York State built the Thruway, and they said, look, we're going to have to set up a toll system, and once this Thruway is paid off, we're not going to have tolls anymore. Now, 20 years ago was the deadline when the Thruway was supposed to be paid off, and it was supposed to become free for New Yorkers to travel on this new road, the interstate. So what happened? They didn't follow through on their promise. It's interesting. Like in business, when you don't follow through on your promise, you lose customers, you lose business. But in government, it seems like when you don't follow through your promises, nobody ever seems to hold anybody accountable. Like we are coming up to next Monday is going to be Martin Luther King Jr. holiday, and one of the things that he did as a world changer, as a defender of freedom, is he said, listen, the United States has wrote a check to America saying this is what the rights that our people have, and you are not honored. There's no funds to cash this check. We demand payment for what you promised us. And so I believe in America is very important because we are supposed to be a democracy run by the people, that the people of America need to pay attention enough to be able to hold the government accountable for what the promises are that they're failing on. And the promises are, now, weed is very interesting. I have a couple things, this is all pulled from, I pulled some stuff from Wikipedia real quick, some facts. So, 1927, okay, so 1914, this is pertaining specifically to New York. New York began to restrict cannabis, okay, by requiring a prescription. By 1927, New York removed the medical purposes and restricted cannabis completely. So we're talking, think about what was going on between 1914 and 1927. We have the Roaring Twenties followed by what? The Prohibition. And the Prohibition was funded largely by conservative Christian groups that felt like if we make this a law, then we'll have better people, because they felt like drugs and alcohol were contributing to people becoming worse and the society becoming worse. And I'm not disagreeing with that, okay? But the part that concerns me is giving the authority the ability to restrict that is a problem, because alcohol, for many of you know, alcohol was used as medicine for a long time, okay? Gunshot wound, you pour a little bit of alcohol in it, okay? So anyways, I wanted to read this. I thought this was really funny. The Rockefeller drug laws in 1973, okay? And we're going to lead up to 1977. In 1973, New York Governor Nelson Rockefeller signed legislation increasing the penalty for selling 2 ounces or more of heroin, morphine, cocaine, or cannabis. All right? I just want you to hear the list of those drugs, okay? What do you hear in that? Heroin, and you hear cocaine, which I agree are drugs that are very bad. They can cause a lot of problems for people, okay, for their lives. But what you also hear is morphine. Morphine is used regularly in hospitals everywhere around the country. What is happening right now in the United States? After the Prohibition didn't last very long for alcohol, but it's lasted almost 100 years for cannabis. So now they're finally saying, okay, it's been a process over the last 30 years, but they're saying, okay, there's lots of medical properties for it, it's more natural, okay, and we're going to make it medically available. And then now people are saying, well, look, it should be recreationally available too, just like alcohol is. I don't really see, I mean, I train my children that weed is bad, because when I was a teenager, I was, drinking a lot and smoking a lot of weed, and what happened? I didn't go to work as much. I made a lot of poor choices because I was intoxicated, you know what I'm saying? So obviously, poor choice making isn't necessarily just because of the substance. It's because of, could it be called lack of parenting, lack of poor choice, lack of ability to make good choices, lack of a community to be able to say, hey, you're not on the right path. For me, the martial arts was a great way where I met positive people in my life that said, hey, you know what? this is not the right way to go. And so that's what we need. We need a community accountability, but I don't necessarily believe that translates automatically into laws, because ultimately what I see in New York State at least is the government laws are being based, are the revenue based. Just like you know, the laws of the throughway tolls and all these other things. The reason we're making recreational weed legal is because New York State wants revenue, okay? They're doing the same thing. On another one of his bullet points for this year is that he's going to pass a law related to congestion in the MTA, which basically is going to mean that if you're riding the subway in New York City, it's going to be more expensive during rush hour to ride the subway. So that's ridiculous, right? It's just a way of gouging people. It's a way of continuing to say, how can I line my pockets a little bit fatter as a government official, okay? Now, we didn't put up with this in New York State and the United States 50 years ago, but right now, what's happening? Why aren't we saying anything? Why aren't we like Martin Luther King Jr. standing up and saying, this is not right? Because we're too busy trying to work 40 or 50 or 60 hours a week, trying to pay our bills, trying to keep our lights and heat on, trying to keep our apartments alive, trying to keep our cars floating, to be able to be involved in politics. I had a guy tell me the other day, I told him that I was moving to Illinois in a couple weeks, and that I was going to be getting involved in, I said, well, here it's where all the cool presidents came from. Obama came from Illinois. He was a governor, he lived in Springfield for a while, and then Abraham Lincoln. If you go to Springfield, Illinois, there's an Abraham Lincoln Museum, all kinds of stuff about Abraham Lincoln. So they even call it the land of Lincoln in Illinois on the license plate. So anyways, the guy's response to me was, well, unless you're a millionaire, you're never going to be a president. And that is true. It's very hard to get into government politics unless you are very wealthy, but that's not how it started, okay? The reason our first presidents became presidents had nothing to do with money. It had to do with the fact that they were part of the revolutionaries that could represent the people in a way to not cause government to become too big. In fact, George Washington, many of you might know this already, but George Washington, our first president, was offered a third term of office. They wanted to let him serve for another 4 years. Everybody loved Washington. He was a hero. He was a war hero. He was one of the reasons why we won the Revolutionary War. And he was like, no, I need to step down now. Somebody else needs to step in. Because why? Because he understood that he was setting a precedent for the future people to follow. Okay? And anyways, decriminalization. Just want to talk about this real quick. 1977. Most of you are going to be surprised to hear that year, because in 1977, I was born in 76. I'm 42 years old right now, okay? So we're talking 40 years ago. What happened was New York State said, you know what? Let's stop throwing people in jail for weed. Legally, that's what they said. So let me just read this. In 1977, New York decriminalized possession of 25 or less grams of marijuana. 25, just so for those of you who don't know, 25 is about an ounce. It's like 28, I think, to an ounce. But basically, about an ounce of weed or less would just be a $100 fine, which is like not wearing your seatbelt, okay, in New York State. However, public possession in public remained a misdemeanor, and civil rights advocates stated that this was used as a loophole to unfairly arrest people. And then New York Times editorial noted in 2012, marijuana arrests declined after the passage of the 1977 law, but that changed in the 1990s. Between 1997 and 2010, the city arrested 525,000 people for low-level public view possession, according to legislative finding. Lawmakers and civil rights lawyers are rightly outraged that more than 80% of those arrested in the city are black and Latino, despite substantial data showing that whites are more likely to use the drug. That's pretty interesting, right? So what were we doing? We're unfairly arresting people for what? Smoking a joint outside? It's like drinking a beer outside. You don't get arrested. You might get a ticket. You might get fined for drinking, public drinking. Like if you're a homeless person and you're drinking beers on the street, you can get tickets for that. All right? But I mean, with this, they're sending people to jail for years. Okay? So this is ridiculous. 500,000 people in the last 20 years have been put in jail. So part of this, if you heard the New York State address by Governor Cuomo, he says, oh, we need to do this. We need to make this legal because, you know, we want to help minorities and we want to help, you know, right the wrongs of civil rights and all that stuff. But I'm telling you, that is not what motivates New York State. What motivates New York State is the same thing that motivates McDonald's. They want to make money, okay? And the problem is that there's nothing wrong with making money. But what happens is, I think it's wrong to say, well, this is wrong, and then 2 years later change and say this is right. There was a time in America where mothers that breastfed their babies was considered a very bad thing. All right. Then now they say, oh, it's the best thing you possibly can do. All right. Circumcision is another thing. When we were young, they were saying, when I was young, they said circumcision was very medically healthy because this, infections and all this. So they were pro circumcision in the hospital for newborn babies. And now my son just had a baby. His wife just had a baby, and they were saying they really almost try to talk you out of it, saying, well, there's no this, there's no that. So what I'm saying is, let's talk about psychoactive drugs and psychiatric field and medicine. For those of you who are familiar with that, they'll put you on a medication. They're like, oh, this is what's happening to you. Oh, let's change up the medicine. Let's try this. Oh, this is what's happening. Oh, let's change it up. The problem is the pharmaceutical industry and big business is making trillions of dollars off this, okay? So by United States legalizing weed, which they've known for a long time, since 1977 when I was 1 year old, they've known that weed is not really a big issue. Let's not make a big deal out of it. But they're doing it now because why? Because they have to keep up with the Joneses. If they got McDonald's in Massachusetts and Vermont, they got no McDonald's in New York. Everybody from New York is running to these two states that are right next door to get their Big Macs, okay? So what's happening is New York State's like, oh my gosh, all this money, we're losing. And so their hope is, by being able to control it, they'll be able to bring the business back to New York. Here's another interesting thing. Medical marijuana. I actually got a medical marijuana card a couple months ago, okay? And I had to go through a legal channel prescribed by a doctor. Here I go. I got a medical marijuana card. But on the card it says you cannot do the leaf, but you can do all these other options, and that whatever it is, it has to be in a container with the prescription label on it. And everybody who's in the medical profession was like, well, yeah, because that's how we can make sure about doses, and that's how we can make sure about this. Listen, if everybody can bake chocolate chip cookies, and we don't need the government to have specific chocolate, only you could buy the chocolate chip cookies that the government sells. Why? Because the recipe's not that hard. What is the issue? Okay, the issue, it has to do with control. It has to do with making money. It has to do, and where is this money going? It's not going to the people, it's going to the top, okay? In fact, a lot of the welfare system that's in New York State is being very mismanaged. We're giving people money that's actually keeping them stuck. It's keeping them from going, we're giving them just enough money so that they're not motivated to go out there and get a job because they're getting just enough money to just live single. You know you can make more money by not being married in New York State than by marrying and staying with the same man and raising your family. You know, that's a true thing. If you're single, if you're single with children, you get money for your children. If you get money for apartment. Section 8 provides housing. So the federal government's saying, we as government we know better than you, the people. So what we're going to do is we're going to take all the resources away slowly. We're going to bleed you from taxes here, regulations here, restrictions there. We're going to have all this control up here, and we're going to give out to as we think is good. But here's the thing, it's still a problem. You know, most of the rehabs that are happening are a failure. Okay, you know that the prescribed recovery medication for heroin and meth, people are addicted to them. I have friends that have been on the recovery medicine for years and years and years with no hope of getting off. Why? Because they're addicted to them. Okay. Pain pills, that's a huge problem. Just in my city alone, I've worked, and people are addicted to their prescription medication, okay? They're going to 12-step meetings talking about, I got a year of clean time. On the other hand, the prescribed meds they're getting from the doctor, they're crushing them up and snorting them, or they're selling them on the black market. So my big issue here is that America was not based on big government, all right? Canada serves the Queen of England, right? Canada's not a democracy. You might not know that. If you're in Canada and you went to a store and you pay and you go to a bar and you eat food, you have no idea the difference between Canada and America, but there's a big difference. One of them is Canadians are not allowed to own guns in their home, including police officers. They have to leave their weapons there. Only if you're in law enforcement can you have weapons, okay? There's very specific restrictions. I went to a police training in Canada, and I had to get a special permit to have my own gun for a couple of weeks at the police range, okay? So the point is, we're we're losing our freedoms. Every year, every day, every state of the state from Governor Cuomo, every time we get a new politician elected who decides to say, you know what, government can manage a human being's life better than, here's the problem. These guys that are in politics are the same as you. You see all this government corruption. Every time we vote, they talk about all the skeletons that come out of the closet for everybody, right? Where you see things that happen like in the Clinton administration. You see things that happen like with the Nixon administration. And there's problems. Guess what? The truth is, folks, the same people that are on top are human beings just like us. Okay? The guys that work at McDonald's and Burger King. We all put our pants on the same way. We all are human beings. We all make mistakes. So I think the problem is, and our founding fathers understood this, and they said because human beings are subject to make mistakes, we don't want to give one human being or a group of human beings power over other human beings, because what happens? Just study history. Slavery happens. Egypt happens, okay, where you have pharaohs on top with all the money and you have everybody else dying on the bottom, okay? Communist China happens. North Korea happens. This is a problem when you don't have a balance of power. In America, we set up three things to balance government power. The legislative branch, the executive branch, and the judicial branch. They're all supposed to have enough power to check the other branches. What's happening? Things have changed in the last 20 years. What happened with 9/11? The Patriot Act, which I thought was really a good thing when I heard about it initially, I've heard lots of negative from it. Because what it does, it gives the government the right to spy on you all the time now. Because all they have to do, like a police officer in America, in order to search their vehicle, they need to have what's called probable cause. In another country like Canada or Africa, they don't need probable cause. They just search it because they want to. They can do whatever they want to do because it's not about people's rights. But in America, if you have no reason to be searched, you can say, look, this is against my constitutional rights. Search and seizure, right? It's in the Bill of Rights. We have a right to we're innocent before proven guilty. These are American things. They were based on English common law way, way back, okay? But bottom line is this. These rights are slipping away. We don't see them slipping away. It's time for America to wake up. APLEA is part of that solution. If you don't want to be involved with APLEA, that's fine. But start paying attention. Start watching these State of the States. I guarantee you most people didn't even watch the State of the State of Cuomo that was on the news because they're doing other things and it's boring. It's politics. I'm not interested in politics. Meanwhile, next time you take a subway, the fare is twice as much because this guy slipped that thing underneath. He's like, free weed, free weed. We're going to legalize weed. By the way, we're going to charge you twice as much to get on the subway. Okay? So they throw stuff in there that you want and throw stuff in there that they want. So it makes... even the way that this bullet point was written about recreational marijuana was like, you would have thought that Governor Cuomo is like Martin Luther King Jr. because he's freeing people, he's giving people rights back, all this crazy stuff. The bottom line is, him and his father, they've been in government all this time. All these people, these 525,000 people that are in jail, were in jail under the administration of the Cuomos, okay? So, who's really the guilty person here? So, that's all I got, okay? And I'm moving on to New York State in some ways. I'm going to be still here. I'm never leaving New York State fully because my children are here. I have friends here. I have APLEA here, okay? But I am going to the Midwest. We're going to make some moves there. We're going to expand. We're going to Africa. Africa is going to be a regular thing. So I would encourage you to get involved. Do something besides working and paying your bills. That's my encouragement to you in 2019. This is the year of big changes. Make some big changes in your life. I'm the Juggernaut signing off.